Good morning, everyone. This is Cynthia Nevels, and welcome to Cowgirls and Crowdfunding. I am super excited to bring episode 3 to you today. Um, I want to say thank you, first of all, to our sponsors and our partners who have allowed us to deliver this free web conference to you each week. I want to say thank you to Wells Fargo Bank and Comerica, and especially thank you to LiftFund for partnering with thinkcrowdfund.com to deliver crowdfunding education as well as tools to help small businesses raise capital. We're really appreciative of their support and their commitment to the small business community and the startup community as well. We're live on thinkcrowdfund.com as well as YouTube today, broadcasting episode 3 today. We're going to be talking about a very innovative new model. I'm going to be giving you some really valuable information as it relates to raising capital, how to raise capital, to prepare your company to raise capital, and then after you've raised the capital, how you can potentially leverage that capital to acquire additional funding from traditional sources. Really innovative stuff, so I'm super excited to bring this to you today. I want to remind you that we have an upcoming crowdfunding town hall here in Texas, happening actually in Austin on July 19th at the Entrepreneur Center in Austin, Texas. That starts at 9:30 a.m. So remember to visit thinkcrowdfund.com, or you can also register online for free at thinkfirstcrowd.com for the upcoming free crowdfunding town hall that's happening on July 19th. Don't miss it. We have really great town halls where we bring the experts to you to answer your questions about equity crowdfunding and the new regulations. This episode, again, is episode 3 of a 4-part series, which I'm super excited to bring to you. The title is The New Hybrid Funding Model, which is having a discussion on how crowdfunding and microfinance innovation can help small businesses access capital. I have 2 of the brightest women in the industry, in the finance industry, in particular, on the show today. I'm really excited to have Celina Pena. She is the Chief Program Officer for LiftFund, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about what LiftFund is and what she does. But I also have Jen Wang. She is the Chief Financial Officer for NextSeed.com. NextSeed, one of the first newly approved equity crowdfunding portals, national equity crowdfunding portals in the United States. I'm super excited to have her on the show. She has a wealth of knowledge that she's going to try and share with us in 27 minutes this morning. Celina and Jen, thank you both so much for joining me on Cowgirls and Crowdfunding.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. Celina, let me start with you. Tell me a little bit about your current role with LiftFund and your background.
Sure. Thank you, Cynthia. So my name is Celina Pena. I'm with LiftFund and Chief Program Officer. I've been with LiftFund since 2010, and before joining the team here, I actually served as a Women's Center Director, which is funded in part by SBA. So I worked with clients who were pre-loan ready and also loan ready and post-loan in terms of supporting folks in strategy, and also just in understanding how they needed to really understand the commitment it took to be a business owner. The fun part is fun, but the really elements of understanding, your budget and how you want to grow are super important things to talk about across all types of businesses. So from there, I actually started lending. I oversaw our Central Texas lending here at LiftFund in Austin and San Antonio, the greater region. And in doing that, I learned even more. That the business plan of action really should be ingrained in a business owner and its team members so that it could take itself really to either a stabilization or growth element. Every business is different, and I think we all can agree to that. Some have a strategy to stay where they're at. Some have a strategy to grow. And our job at LiftFund is to really help folks who aren't accessing capital through traditional means, meaning a bank, a financial institution, figure out how they can navigate capital and also grow. So now I get to sit in between both underwriting and lending, and we actually develop products. We work with partners across Texas and 12 other states so that we really are complementing what's going on in communities. So we work with a lot of organizations and businesses that support other businesses seeking capital. And so my role is to help facilitate that through technology, through partnerships, and really mediate between underwriting and lending so that we create the right balance of growing LiftFund's commitment to supporting small businesses.
Fantastic, thank you. Jen, tell me a little bit about your fascinating background. You're the Chief Financial Officer for NextSeed, but you've done so much more. Tell me a little bit about your background.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thanks, everyone. My name is Jen, and I'm currently the CFO at NextSeed. And NextSeed is one of the leading, if not the lead, the number one, crowd lending platform in Texas and the U.S. As of today, we have helped Texas-based business already raised $1.2 million to date over the last 12 months. And our focus is really trying to help local businesses, especially Texas-based businesses, raise money, to fulfill their dreams, essentially. And my personal background prior to joining NextSeed, I spent 12 years in the financial industry. So first, starting off as an investment banker at Morgan Stanley in New York, then Hong Kong, and then transitioned to private equity in Asia Pacific. And because of my background in Asia, I actually have an extensive experience dealing with growth businesses. And I think one thing I would like to actually share with everybody about my experience is I think small business owners generally think bigger businesses have different sets of problems and think about problems differently. Actually, based on my experience, it's not really the case. The motivations and the kind of problems you see daily is essentially the same. It's just more how big and how large the scale of the problem is. So I really hope that my experience I can share with everyone I know who's really motivated about building their business.
That's fantastic, and I think you made an excellent point and very true. Let's talk about alternative funding sources and why they are so important in today's market. We have a lot of innovation, a lot of companies with great products and services that are coming online, but oftentimes we all know that the barriers that are faced, one of the major barriers that is faced by small businesses and startups is access to capital. Why is alternative funding such an important tool to use today? And Celina, I'll let you start and answer that question.
Sure, yeah. So alternative financing, I think I told you this, Cynthia, that I actually try to use the word opportunity financing. I think that it's super important that folks understand there's a differentiation between going in to leverage your title for your car, or using a payday lending element. Those things sometimes are very important and depends on different scenarios, but they also cost a lot. And LiftFund is a mission-driven lending organization. We're a CDFI, so Community Development Financial Institution, that was founded by Treasury through the Clinton administration in 1994. And our goal really is to help those who are seeking capital have a healthy financial alternative solution. So what does that mean? It means LiftFund provides term loans, affordable loans. We abide by usury laws in all of our states. We provide about 2.8 to 3.4 million a month to small businesses throughout our footprint. And in doing so, we have multiple sources of funds that allow us to help folks who would not be able to qualify. So we use a blended approach to making sure that the person who's in front of us, the business owner who's in front of us, can afford the capital, right? That it makes business sense so that their business is growing, whether it's adding new employees or buying equipment so that they're able to sustain their business. And again, one of the things that I think is really important from a crowdfunding or crowd lending and a term loan is with a crowd funding element, and I've participated on the elements of crowdfunding, not crowd lending directly, is that you really have to sell yourself to that you're going to grow, right? That you have this commitment to grow, whether it's starting or even going into other elements. At LiftFund, we're looking at how you're doing now. And we look a little more less on the projections. So it's how have you been, and let's right size the loan for you. And so I think just in terms of having a differentiation or a value add, we are mission driven. We are a community lender, and I think the good thing is that we're here to serve, and we also look for other solutions if we can't serve. There are other CDFIs in Texas that do work here. There are also crowd lending and crowdfunding platforms too that we do refer out to as well.
Fantastic, thank you. So I wanted to define microlending for our viewers to help them understand what's the difference between crowd lending, microlending, and equity crowdfunding. But first, let's start with the microlending. How would you define microlending? Celina.
So microlending is defined by SBA, a Small Business Administration, as 50,000 and under. So a loan that is 50,000 and under. And it used to be actually 35,000 under, and it went up about 4 years ago. And the reason why is if you look at some of the trends of small business, if you look at, even if you're a business owner yourself, right, and are trying to think like, how much do I really need? What studies have shown is that most folks need 50,000 and under. In terms of that piece of equipment or working capital. And so when you apply that, what you see is a gap of opportunity being funded, because traditional financial institutions, I think, have a threshold for earning revenue, right? So you'll see that in some of the trends, small business lending has decreased within the 100,000 and under range. And so an organization like LiftFund, who provides microloans, that's our job, right, is to say we want to be able to provide capital to drive the smaller business to grow, to move into some of the larger money as they potentially need to. Just so on another note, so microloan defined as 50,000 and under. The SBA is a big supporter of it, but just so you know, less than 1/3 of our microloans are funded by federal agencies. Most of that money that we provide is from resources of our own. And we also provide small business loans as well. So while we do focus on the microloan side, we do go above 50,000.
Excellent, thank you. So Jen, can you define and explain to us what is crowd lending? This is new, essentially, in the market as it relates to the new rate. I think people really understand what crowd lending is.
Sure. I think, there are other ways that people do it, but with NextSeed, under our business model, we essentially help small business owners source a loan from the crowd. So using our platform, business owners can now participate actively in the loan market and source capital from people who really believe in their businesses. What does that mean? It means that instead of borrowing money from a bank, right, or your families, you can now invite hundreds, if not thousands, of people who have been touched by you, or who love your business and who are willing to take a risk on you, and they can do it at $100 each time. So it's already approved by financial regulators, and it's a new innovation, a new way of using technology to reach out to people to source capital as a way to fund your business. And our business process now and our technology basically deliver a very intuitive and efficient solution to business owners to achieve this goal. And very simply, if you go see our website, you can understand the mechanics of how it works, right? How you prepare a campaign to showcase and market your business, and using your business, like the operation and the content of your business, to attract people to give you a loan. It's a very different thinking process approach versus traditional financial institutions in terms of how they think about lending money to you.
That's so true. One of the challenges oftentimes that women, small business owners face is the fear of rejection, which I talked about in the previous web conference. And I think that through crowd lending, there is still that fear on a larger scale, but yet and still, if you have people who actually love your business or love your product and just simply want to support you, it may make it a little bit easier for you to raise the $50,000 that you're looking to raise from the people who love you, right?
Yeah, if I may, I just want to add one last point. When you borrow money from a traditional financial institution, that money is really just pure cost to you, because that money, other than paying for what you need to grow your business, it doesn't do anything. But when crowd lending comes in, it's completely different. We call it value adding lending. Why do we say that? It's literally because you're reaching out to your supporters to lend you money as a part of your business, and because they have invested in your business, they become your advocates. They go out there. It's a ripple effect. It's so everyone who has lent you money has now become committed to help you grow your business as your resources. That's why we think crowd lending is a very powerful tool, especially for small businesses where the community impact, the advocate impact could really bring material changes to your growth.
That's an excellent point. I'm glad you brought that up, and that also applies when it comes to equity crowdfunding as well. With equity crowdfunding, you're using essentially the same model where you're going to the crowd to raise the capital that you may need for your startup or for your small business, but in exchange for the capital that they may give to you or invest in you, you're going to exchange ownership in your business as a exchange in this exchange. And so I believe that that's adding value as well, because those people will want to see you grow because they can benefit from your business being prosperous and profitable. And so I think that is actually a value add, a big value add. So crowd lending and equity crowdfunding are similar but not the same. One is a debt instrument, and the other one is equity, where you're giving up ownership in your business, but yet still you're going to the crowd to raise the capital versus walking into a bank or a micro lender to request funding from that institution. Very interesting. So let's talk about, Jen, if you would share, let's start from the beginning. If I am a small business and I am interested in raising capital, not interested, I need to raise capital, but I'm not quite sure what I'm supposed to do to prepare my company to be ready, and then also to understand how much should I ask for. But let's tackle one thing at a time. How does a company get prepared to raise capital?
Sure. So I think when my personal experience, dealing with bigger scale companies and also smaller scale business owners, I think the motivations and in terms of how you get prepared is pretty much the same. First, like when you borrow money, you have to get organized, right? What does that mean? What doesn't matter you borrow money from the bank or from crowd lending, you have to organize yourself. The typical information that people want to see will be, for instance, your personal FICO score. Why is that? Because the Fed basically, if your score is below 620, there's an industry standard that basically suggests that you will be, a subprime credit, meaning that you will be at a higher range of default. So if you can, you should try to, really using online resources and watch your own personal credit scores to make sure that you're not in that category, because that one is a hard score, right? It's a standard that's applied. So most people, they're not aware of this, so they're not really focused on their personal credit. But the FICO score number, unfortunately, is actually fairly important because of the statistics that's available out there to suggest, default risk. And the second thing will be, your personal business track record, how people can relate to your experience. So building out a nice, resume that speaks to, an extensive experience or success in building out entrepreneurship, or in whatever endeavors that you're going into, that you have some backgrounds where people know that you know what you're doing and they're willing to give you the support that you need. Then another one will be, your personal net worth. That is something that, people generally, I mean, it's more relied on by traditional financial institutions, less so by crowd lending platforms like ourselves, but we generally would still ask to see that information just to get a good understanding of your personal background and what you have been doing, and where, the risk, how you think about taking risk, essentially, in terms of your future endeavors. Then the last one will be really about your personal business. Having, a really organized financial accounts is paramount to the lending process. Doesn't matter who you talk to. People want to know how much money your business is making, what's the revenue, what's the profit margin, what's the cost base. Those things, that's where actually I think, based on my experience, what I find most small business owners have some difficulties because they don't have a finance accounting background. So a lot of them would say, how do I do this, right? I would suggest really spend some time really trying to follow Quickens or these professional, software services where they make it intuitive for you to organize your expense items and organize your sales items, where they produce a decent amount of organized outcomes so that people can understand, what your business is, and then be able to relate to those numbers. Because based on our past experience, we deal with a lot of, aspiring borrowers, and what we find is when you don't spend the time to organize your accounts, it's really difficult for people to really help you because they don't even have the ability to understand what you do. So I think that one I would emphasize as very, very important. And the last thing would be just, making sure you improve your social media profile, make sure that you build a good following, because for people like us, that's critically important. That speaks to your relationship, to your community, to your advocates. Like, how deep are your roots, right? And studies have definitely shown that businesses where, you have a lot of social relationship, and if we leverage that for crowd lending, it definitely reduces your risk of default because of the social pressure, right? It's obviously your community is trying to help you, and on the flip side of it is that you're responsible to your community. So for us, if you have a deep following, we believe, and the statistics does suggest that you're able to leverage that to your benefit and reduce your default rate. So I think from my end, this is how I would recommend small business owners really thinking about how to get organized. And the last one, in regards to Cynthia's question about how do you think about how much you need to borrow, I think that question really comes in several layers, but it's a balance between what's your business goal and what's the cash return deliverable by achieving your goals. So to break that down into simpler terms, it would be, number one, what's the sales goal of your business? Like, what do you want to do? And then the second part is, to achieve that sales goal, how much resources do you need to make that happen? And how much would that cost you, right? And the second one, how long does it take to reach those goals? And then lastly, after you have factored in, your sales target, the resources necessary to make it happen, the time frame of making that happen, then you will understand how much you need to generate in terms of cash return to fulfill your plan. So every lender will ask, business owners for a business plan, and a business plan actually is just really putting down what I just mentioned into finer details. But as a starting point, every business owner should really have in mind in terms of, what do I want to achieve, and how much would that cost, and how long would that take? And if after I factor into 1, 2, and 3, and I realize, hey, I generate more return by executing my plan, right? Then you definitely would be able to. It definitely makes rational sense that to get that money for yourself to grow your business. And because you know your goals and you know the resources necessary, which is the cost to make that materialize that plan, you know how much money you will need.
I think that is such excellent advice. I know I've been in this business for 16 years helping small businesses, and oftentimes they don't think about any of that. They just look at, I need a certain dollar amount to go and pay for or buy this product for me to resell, but they don't look at the true cost of the money and how long it will take to get the money back. I think that's excellent advice. Thank you, Jen, for sharing that. Before we run out of time, I want to talk to you, Celina, about this new hybrid model. You know, after you've done the planning that Jen has suggested to us, and then you have utilized these alternative sources such as crowdfunding or microlending, you've raised the capital, or I should say crowdlending or crowdfunding. You've raised the capital successfully. You have now your, let's just say, $20,000 that the crowd has gifted or invested in you. Now there's this new model that we've been talking about, whereas you can now leverage those dollars to get more capital from other sources, such as SBA loans or microloans. Let's talk about that for a moment, Celina, if you would.
Sure, yeah. So I'd like to just, in terms of even to your question, the things that Jen brought up, strategy and timing are super important for any of this, because it does require you not only to pay attention to your business, but also pay attention to where your business is going, right? So you're doing your day-to-day, and then you're also thinking, okay, now I really want to be able to do X. And so when you think about assessing, which I think Jen was referring to, gathering, organizing yourself, I think from a NextSeed, yourself, Cynthia, and myself, it's like you need to be in the driver's seat. It could be as simple as complex, as Jen has mentioned, but knowing where you're at and where you want to go and how much it's going to cost you, all of that can be done very simply or very complex, but don't ignore it, because then you get to make some important decisions, which leads to blending financing, right? The work that you and I have seen and done is where someone will raise specifically, including yourself, from a crowdfunding support element and say, I'm going to take this, say I raised $5,000 for a piece of equipment, and then find financing to leverage that, where you're actually blending a non-debt element with a debt element, meaning a loan. I think that it takes, no matter how small or how big, the time and commitment to say, can I do this? Will I do this right? Do I build the right campaign towards it so that people vest in me, and maybe they don't understand the full picture, right? But that I know that I can take our game, your game, right, your business game to the next level. And so all of those things, I think you don't have to do it alone, right? I think that's important to tell everyone who's on this, is that you can reach out to any of us to support. What are your ideas? What are you thinking through? Each of us has a punch list of how do you look at yourself financially that I'm sure we could share with you all in terms of getting ready. But at the end of the day, it really is about pencil to paper, or typing numbers into Excel, whatever that may look like, to get a better sense of what is best for me. And that's a hard question, right? Cynthia, you've been through that. Jen, you've mentioned, I did really complex deals now to these deals. I mean, it takes a lot of conversation, and many times people sit in a room by themselves, think they have a strategy, walk out, and then it's like, oh, there's more. I need to do more, or I didn't realize I needed to do more. Thinking and also preparing, right? So it's, there's, the good thing is you have plenty of options. The bad thing is you have plenty of options and you've got to choose them, right? And figure out what's the right fit for me. And I think that's one reason why we're very supportive of just having conversations around it, so that people feel, okay, maybe I don't have $10,000 for a business loan, but do I have 25 friends that I could either raise debt from or crowdfund from and then leverage again?
Absolutely. And so in my example, in another venture that I have, I went to the crowd to raise approximately $4,800 for equipment for a food truck, but I needed so much more capital for that food truck to come to fruition. And so essentially, simply what I did was bought the equipment in cash, which then converted to an asset on the book, and then use that when I applied for a loan with LiftFund to get additional capital that was needed in order to build out the truck. And luckily, as a financial institution, because you all were astute and involved in the crowdfunding space, it wasn't a problem. You understood where those funds came from, as long as I had the true documentation that was required and needed. And that, I think, is the key for people to understand that if you are raising capital from the crowd, there's a way to actually record that data and then ensure that you can supply the information that's needed to a lender to get additional capital.
Right.
So you guys made that process really simple. I think that this blending is something that is new, but I think very important for people to understand that it's possible. The preparation, Jen, that you talked about and the organization of your company prior to ever sitting down and having a conversation with a lender like yourself, Celina, is going to help make that process smooth and get you to a yes faster. That's what we really want for people, is to help to get them to a yes much more quickly so that they can start to implement and execute their strategies and grow their businesses. How can we have time here really quick about NextSeed? How can they find out more?
I'm sorry, it was static. I couldn't hear you. I thought the question was addressed to me.
Yes, ma'am. How can people connect with you and learn more about NextSeed?
Oh, sure. Please, we are very responsive, so you can definitely reach us at info@nextseed.com, or just review our website. Our website is open because now we have two different portals. One is Texas-based, one is national-based. The distinction is just, who do you really want to focus your capital source from? Do you want just purely Texas supporters, or you actually want a national audience? So please do check out our website. The difference is just nextseed.co versus nextseed.com, which is a Texas-based website. So if you have any information requests or additional conversation you would like to have, definitely just reach out to us. Our information are on the website, and we are very responsive. We reply very quickly, to inbounds from small business owners. So definitely feel free to reach out.
Thank you. Celina, how can people find out more about LiftFund or connect with you?
Sure. So they can visit our site as well at liftfund.com. You can email me directly at Celina Pena, cpena@liftfund.com. And depending on your question, I can route you to a team member who can support you either pre-lending, so talking about strategies before lending, and also or I can route you to a lending team member, which they can support you in doing some financial assessments before you apply.
Fantastic. Thank you both very much for joining me on Cowgirls and Crowdfunding. I believe this information is very helpful for small business owners who are trying to figure out what's available. This is them in new blended and really enough capital for them to grow. Today's show is brought to you by Wells Bank, LiftFund, and Think Crowdfund, as well as Comet. We really appreciate our sponsors for their support for this technical assistance and crowdfunding education series. If you need help deciding what to do and what sources are available for crowdfunding, you can always visit us at thinkcrowdfund.com, complete our free questionnaire on the Get Help tab. You can also attend our free town halls that happen across the state of Texas. Our next one is July 19th in Austin, Texas at 9:30 a.m. at the Entrepreneur Center. Make sure you join us and meet some of the experts who can answer your questions face to face. Our next episode, episode 4, will air on July 14th at 10:30 a.m. and I'm going to have an expert and executives from the small business department who are talking about their vast resources that are available to small businesses to help you grow. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.
Good day, ladies.